I feel like I probably could have chosen something a little bit easier than switching.
Maybe just a little bit.
Yeah, I mean that would have been ideal.
Hi, everyone. I'm Samantha T, and welcome to another Fresh Fiction Video Book Club. Y'all, we have a great guest tonight. It is Georgia K. Boone, whose debut rom-com came out this year. I'll Be Gone for Christmas. And what else we always want Christmas books when we're heading into the season. Georgia, it's so good to see you tonight.
Yeah, it's fantastic, fantastic to see you. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, this is your debut rom-com, so let's kind of start off a little bit easy. Tell us a little bit about yourself and how did you first get started writing?
Yeah, wow. So a little bit about myself. I have been writing for, I guess, a few years, different sorts of things. And I'm trying to think like what specifically about writing, because I feel like I feel like there's always that cliche for writers, like, oh, I've been writing since I was a kid, since like doing my journal. I used to think I was Harriet the Spy, because I would just sit and like when I was in school or whatever and just like write down everything that I saw. So I've been writing forever, and then when I was doing this book, this is sort of interesting for me because I had primarily been doing like young adult stuff or like writing for kids, writing for younger audiences. And this was a little bit of a breath of fresh air because I felt like I could write about characters that were actually in closer to, I guess, the situations that I'm in now as an adult, as opposed to sort of, I don't know, writing with a little bit more of a what do you want writers to like get out of this sort of thing when you're writing for kids. So that was an interesting change. But yeah, I've been writing forever, and yeah.
And this book was so fun because there was so much going on with it. It is very reminiscent of the holiday movie where you've got the switching of locations, which I think in a lot of ways everybody wishes that they could do. I'm like, okay, we're get away for the holidays and kind of experience that new thing. But again, you've got these all-encompassing stories going on with parallel tracks with both Bee and Clover, and they truly are switching locations and then connecting with the because I'm trying to stay away from some spoilers, but connecting with the others in each other's lives. So how were you balancing these stories as you were going through? Did you keep like separate sets of notes? Did you write one story at a time? Was it easier to go back and forth? How did you do that so you could ultimately merge it into one novel?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. It's interesting because I feel like I probably um went the harder direction since this is my first um like romance rom. I feel like I probably could have chosen something a little bit easier than switching.
Maybe just a little bit.
Yeah, I mean that would have been ideal. I feel like I kind of just switched between perspective as I was writing. I'm a little bit more of a, you have plotter and pantser. And so for me, I'm much more of a pantser. I just kind of go. That being said, as I was writing the story, B's story probably is the one who stayed pretty much the same. Whereas Clover, I kept changing over and over and over again. Clover, I probably changed up until the last minute. Um, and it was hard. One of the things that I ended up doing eventually was having to plot out not just like the days that things were happening, but because it's a time difference, me realizing that someone's morning was someone else's afternoon, and like that was a little frustrating. So I ended up having to plot that out. But yeah, definitely, I just sort of switching between perspectives as I was going, and then changing Clover's story a lot, kind of as the more I cemented B's story, the more I changed Clover's story, which is sort of weird, but yeah.
And was Clover's story always going to be an element of coming out?
Yeah.
Because I think that's the other interesting thing with this novel is that you have a straight relationship and then you have the LGBTQ, and again,
Mhm.
you're mixing so many different things.
Yeah.
You don't you don't often find that in the same novel where there's so again, like I said, yeah, you didn't want to do this easy for your golly.
I could
Was
have
that
chosen some
always the
easier
intent
topics.
when you were going off? I mean, when you were first going into the story, did you always have those different elements in your mind? Was that such an integral part that you wanted to make sure that you had both of these happening?
Yeah, yeah, actually from jump, I knew Clover was gonna come out and I knew that there were gonna be these different dynamics. I think the hardest thing was figuring out how out she was going to be earlier or later in the story because that ends up changing so many other dynamics in terms of the relationships that happen. So that was probably one of the reasons why I kept having to kind of hammer out her story more and more. But yeah, I knew from jump that that was going to be the main focus.
What was the most fun aspect of this story for you when you were writing it?
I had a lot of fun writing the side characters, I gotta say, because I feel like in any story, like I really love the community aspect, the friendship aspect, the like kind of the hijinksy side characters. And I really liked kind of exploring the people around Bee and Clover that made their experiences so interesting and rich. So like Clover's dad, who ends up kind of taking Bee under his wing, and then like Clover's friends who she ends up kind of meeting in the condo that Bee lives in. Those aspects were just a lot of fun because they're people who exist in the first character's world, but that they don't really engage with in the same way till you have that switch and then they kind of pop. So that was probably the most fun.
And those other characters and the location are also such integral parts because again, the switch element. So did the character, or not the character, did the locations themselves seem like almost an additional character while you were putting together the story? Because
Yeah,
I mean, Brand has
definitely.
its own persona in and of itself. And so again, that big city other element.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I feel like one of the thing, like I love The Holiday, the movie, right? And I feel like one of the reasons why people tend to love that film, obviously you have the actors and all that stuff, but it's such this like wish fulfillment, right? Either you have this like incredible gorgeous LA house or you have this like really cute British cottage. And I kind of wanted to have that same feeling with, you know, having this like gorgeous condo in San Francisco that kind of makes you feel like a mogul versus like a really big farmhouse in Salem with like all of the snow and all of this stuff. So I really wanted to have make sure that those settings kind of felt a little bit like wish fulfillment for the characters and also for the reader.
What's the biggest surprise for you as you were putting this story together? I mean, like you said, you've been writing for a while, but other types of stories. So now having this be a rom-com and the debut getting it published, did you have a big surprise? Was there something unexpected for it or something that you just really didn't anticipate?
I think, to be honest, I don't think I anticipated how much people connected to the story because there are some, you know, elements in terms of like Clover losing her mom and you know, there's a big aspect of Bee dealing a little bit with like feeling like she's letting her parents down. Um, and you know, one of the big aspects that I wanted for this story is that the reason why they decide to switch houses is not because they're necessarily running from a romantic situation or they're not running towards a romantic situation, but they're kind of just running from their own life and like what's not working for them. And then they end up finding romance and feeling that part of themselves. But I was very pleasantly surprised by how much people seem to connect to both of the characters. It's always interesting, to be honest, when I see, you know, people are different. So you have some people who really don't like bees and you have some people who really don't like Clover. You have some people who really like both. And that's just been interesting just seeing the different, I guess, characters that people connect to or don't connect to. That's been interesting.
So have you had people come up to you and like, oh, I love Clover, but man, that bee, I mean, God, or vice versa. I mean, are they like loving one character and just like over it for the other, or do
They
they kind
definitely
of
don't,
comments on the pot?
people don't definitely don't come up to me and tell me, which is great. I prefer that. But you know, like I'll see it online and stuff. And yeah, it's interesting where some people will feel more or less connected to like one romantic story or one plot line than another. And I just find that really interesting. for whatever reason because it's never consistent, right? Like I think it would be more understandable maybe if some people were like, "Oh, like this plot line I could do without, but this one is great." But it really is a mix. Depends on, ideally people like both. A lot of people do like both. But it has been interesting to see what people kind of connect with or don't connect with. So,
Well, and you were saying earlier too that Clover's
sorry.
story, oh no, no, it's fine. That Clover's story really evolved as you were going through it. So did you keep those various rough drafts? Or are you one of those that can be in a pantry like, okay, nope, moving away from that. It's gone, it's dead to me. Let me move on to something else. And how many different kind of iterations do you feel that portion and that character went through?
Oh, so many, probably like 10. I'm sure I have the draft somewhere. And it's hard to let go because, there are some funny parts. I actually think Clover's backstory was a lot funnier than it is now, which is kind of hilarious to think about. And there's stuff that I wrote that would just make me laugh over and over again, but it just didn't fit like what needed to happen. And that's probably the hardest part is like you get a scene that you're really attached to, or you get like a moment between characters that you're like really like, oh yeah, this is kind of the glue that like holds things together. But then you think about it, halfway through the story, near the end of the story, and you're like, oh, this isn't going to get us to where we need to go. So I've got to scrap that whole thing. So I definitely have a bunch of different versions of Clover's storyline. And again, like it's the main thrust of it, like her coming out and her like relationship with her family and stuff. A lot of that is the same, but there's a lot of things that I had to change in order to have it fit her growth and her evolution, and also the evolution of the other characters. Because it wasn't just her, but like making sure that the closure that she finds is closure for other people too, so that they can also move on. So,
I think I would expect that was also still so challenging because there is so much intermingling of all of the characters, and that
yeah.
is the basis of the stories anyway.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And that was definitely one of the harder parts too, is eventually thinking about, there's a point at which like they're completely separate, but there's a point in the story in which they all kind of have to reckon with the situation that they're in and come together again. And figuring that out was fun, actually, because you had asked earlier, like what was one of the more fun parts. I think writing Bee and her sister later on actually ended up being really fun. Um, just because their reaction to each other and the decisions that they make is hilarious to me. But yeah, kind of figuring out how they're gonna come together now that they've sort of been having these different storylines has been and was interesting for sure.
It was interesting to see how that relationship evolved as you're going through. Because I admit, you grabbed me at the get go when B is having all of these challenges, and I'm just like, oh, this poor girl. And it's like, oh, I can so relate. Relate right now with work. It's like, okay, where is my vacate so I can go switch and go someplace else?
I mean, so many of us need that though, right? Like so many of us gets kind of stuck in like the situations that we're in, whether it's work or family or whatever the case may be, and like sometimes we need that like change of pace or like that just like a completely different situation, because no matter what we try to do, we just can't move out from what we're doing, we just can't like we can't find the buoy, I guess, in the space that we're in. Sometimes you just got to go someplace else. So, yeah, no, I definitely I writing that part of B was really cathartic in some ways. I actually realized when I was writing the book, I got diagnosed with ADHD, and I was like, "Oh, yeah, that makes sense." I was like, I understand. She probably has that too. Me and B.
Well, talking about having an anchor and having a bit of an escape, let's switch over to our fresh fiction facts. And because your book is I'll Be Gone for Christmas, we've got to do some Christmas themed questions. So these
Yeah,
are rapid fire off the top of your head. We'll see where it goes, okay?
sounds good.
Okay. Decorating. Are you a white lights or colored lights?
White lights, for sure.
It doesn't matter if it's on the tree or on the exterior of your home.
Oh, white lights on the exterior and then colored lights on the tree.
Gift wrapping or gift bags?
Gift wrapping.
Open Christmas presents Christmas Eve or Christmas Day? Or do you do a
One
combination of both?
combination, at least one on Christmas Eve and then the rest on Christmas Day. That's my preference.
What's the best thing you ever found in your Christmas stocking?
Couldn't have been anything great because I can't think of anything.
Did you put out Christmas stockings? I'm finding more and more people don't do that anymore.
I do, yeah. I do put out Christmas stockings.
Real tree or fake tree?
Fake tree.
Nativities or not?
I like them for like a nostalgic feel, but I don't have them in my house.
What's the best gift that you ever gave someone?
Oh, I don't know the best gift I've ever given someone, but that's because I personally feel that I give really good gifts, like consistently. So I will say one of my favorite gifts that I gave someone, I gave my father a Build-A-Bear that said, "I love you, Daddy." And he was very confused because he was like, why would you give a man a bear? Stuffed bear. And then like 6 months later, he called me and he's like, "Man, I love that bear." And I was like, "Yeah, because you miss your daughter, obviously."
Exactly. Come on. What tree ornament or decoration would you be brokenhearted if something happened to it?
Um, I don't know. I think there are a lot of tree ornaments that my mom has that I don't have in my own house. But I can't think of what they are, like off the top of my head. But I feel like there were some, if she were to get rid of some of the ones that like we grew up with, I'd probably be really sad.
I get that. Yeah. Okay, Christmas cards, yes or no?
Yes.
Do you write additional letters or do you just sign them and send them off?
Depends on who it's to.
Yep, I can understand that.
Yeah.
Okay, all right, now here's one that always causes so much debate. Fruitcake, yes or no?
I have never had a fruitcake.
Wow. Okay. See, I made a special trip with my dad earlier this week because we have a fruitcake company in his hometown.
Oh.
And he wanted to go get fruitcake. We had to knock on the door, chase down the office guy. It's like, big deal.
Oh, that's so funny. Yeah, no, I don't even know what they taste like, but I've heard that they're very popular.
Well, it does make a difference on like the kind of alcohol that somebody might spike it with. So just saying, What is your favorite holiday Christmas carol or song?
Mary, did you know?
And what is one thing about the holidays that you could definitely live without, other than fruitcake?
Definitely live without. Now, I can't really think of anything, but when I was living in New York, I probably could have done without the sludge, the snowy sludge going everywhere. But right now, everything to me seems good, holidays wise.
Good deal. Well, of course, a couple of the other most important questions for our readers and listeners is what can we look forward to from you next?
Well, hopefully, I will have another Christmas novel soon. I'm working on one right now, and I've got a couple of other projects in the hopper. Nothing I can give too many details about right now, but definitely have another Christmas project coming up.
Awesome. And where is the best place for our readers and listeners to keep up with you and find out the details when you can start sharing some of those interesting tidbits?
Definitely my Instagram at Georgia K. Boone, because I have not gotten a website together yet. ADHD. So you can follow me at Georgia K. Boone on Instagram.
You got to work on that website. Come
I
on.
know. I know.
Well, in the meantime, everyone go check out her Instagram. And if you don't have it already, go out, pick up your copy of I'll Be Gone for Christmas by Georgia K. Boone. Georgia, thanks again for joining us. It was great to talk with you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.